I know that you've tried. I know that you've really put in the effort, but you were given the wrong information. If you want good health until being very, very, very old, you need to eat this way.
Ken, as somebody who in the past has had their own struggle with weight loss, what would you say to somebody who comes up to you today and says, I've tried everything. This weight is just stuck on me. I've tried all the popular diets. I've tried fasting. I've tried it all, but I feel stuck. I feel like it's just me. What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is you are not alone. You are in very, very good company, and you're in numerous company. The vast majority of us have been completely misled when it comes to what actually is a proper human diet. And I hope we can dive deep into that subject. But I myself was deluded as a doctor who did get some nutrition training in medical school. I had no idea at the time when I became severely obese. Back then we called it morbidly obese. I became pre-diabetic. I had all these chronic medical problems, and I thought that was just a product of getting old. I was in my mid-30s. But I felt very old at that time. And so I would say, yes, I know that you have tried many of the popular diets. And I would also like to add that I know you've diligently tried those diets. I no longer accuse people of, well, you just half-assed did this. You're sitting on the couch eating Doritos. You're not really trying. In the past, I would have accused you of that because I thought that losing weight, getting healthy was just a product of move more, eat less. And that didn't work for me. And I think that we're seeing that it doesn't truly work for millions of people around the world in modern societies. It just doesn't work for the vast majority of us. So I would say, I know that you've tried. I know that you've really put in the effort, but you were given the wrong information. And most people, when they hear that, are relieved. Like, oh my God, I thought I was just a lazy glutton. Maybe there is hope. And yes, my answer is 100% there is hope. When you discover where you fall on the proper human diet spectrum, all of a sudden, things that seemed impossible to you before suddenly become possible and even probable. And the sun comes out and you're like, oh, okay. So I've been doing this wrong the entire time. Not because I'm dumb, not because I'm lazy, not because I'm a glutton, but just because I was given the wrong information.
Well, I think a big part of the problem too is there's so much conflicting information when it comes to diet. So like you said, people have been trying and they've probably been trying on these different diets over the years and are feeling exhausted at this point because so many of these diets that quote unquote work are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think a good jumping off place, you mentioned the proper human diet a couple times there. Let's talk about that template and we can dive into various aspects as we're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, let's touch on, you said something very important. People are frustrated. People have just given up. And there is a thing in animal biology that happens in all mammals of any species, and that's called learned helplessness. If you frustrate an animal enough times, including humans, they just give up. This is well known in the psychological literature. And so this has happened to literally millions of people, Jesse. They just have given up. They're like, screw it. I guess I'm just big boned. I guess I'm just fat. I don't know. But again, I want to reiterate that no. You were just using the wrong template, even if it was endorsed by a very prominent, famous organization or association like the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, the American Medical Association, Eat Lancet. I could go on and on and on with all these organizations because very often they have other interests as their main interest. Their main interest is not you getting healthy and optimizing your health and realizing your best true health where you feel good and you're happy to get out of bed every day. So yes, your frustration does not mean that you're a failure. It does not mean that there is no answer. It just means you haven't found the proper answer for you yet.
And you touched on something there that brought up another aspect of this for me. It's the fact that you have to actually be doing the research on your own these days and deep diving in to really learn what the proper human diet is. And that also layers onto what I mentioned before, the fact that there is conflicting information. So not only do you have to do the research, you have to sift through conflicting information. So there's a lot of variables against people. We've stated that up front. Let's get right into the meat and potatoes and talk about what this proper human diet is for people.
I have a few basic principles of a proper human diet that I talk about on my YouTube channel and other social media. So I think by definition, a proper human diet. Now, let me just add, Jesse, up front, this is not just from my limited training on nutrition in medical school. That basically taught me nothing useful when it comes to the caring, feeding of just someone out in the wild, which this is our wild, as weird as that may be. That's what this is. Whatever, if you live in an urban, suburban, or even if you're out in the country, that's your wild. That you are still a wild animal, and you are somewhat domesticated, unfortunately, but this is our current wild. And so by definition, based on years of studying the anthropological data, paleoanthropological data, reading text from explorers and researchers from the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and early 1900s, it becomes pretty obvious, these basic principles. And so this is where I've gleaned all this from, not just from reading the latest nutrition research, because you won't find any of this there. So number one, a proper human diet is by definition ancestrally appropriate. And for the average doctor or nutritionist who has not dipped their toe into the anthropological literature, into the paleoanthropological literature, this literally, not only do they not know what it says, they don't even understand how important that really is. And it's super, super important to know the diet that basically brought us, that helped us evolve into this apex species that runs the planet currently, for better or for worse. I understand. But that's very, very important, because if you want to be a cow rancher, you have to know what a proper cow diet is, or you will fail as a cow rancher, right? If you want to raise broccoli, you have to know what a proper broccoli diet is. What do you feed your broccoli, or you will go bankrupt as a broccoli farmer. And so when you get into animal biology, which that's my undergraduate degree, there's no debate. There's no doubt. We've known for hundreds of years what a proper cow diet is. If you want the cow to be healthy, you feed them this. If you want the cow to be super fatty, which is what the current preference for humans, and I think there's a paleoanthropological reason why we want all of our animals to be fatty and have fatty muscle and fatty liver, which we can get into, you feed them this other diet. And that same exact concept applies to humans as well. You have to know what is the species-specific diet for humans over the last 3.5 million years. Now, we've been on this planet as a species for about 350,000 years. But our ancestors, long before that, were already eating this proper human diet. The next concept is that a proper human diet is nutrient dense. The entire reason you eat food is for nutrition. Now, many of us may eat food out of boredom because of social pressure, family pressure, etc. But the real, true reason, the biological reason that you eat food is to glean nutrition. Amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals. And let me say, Jesse, that those are the only essential nutrients they are. We hear lots about polyphenols, we hear lots about fiber, but in reality, those are not essential nutrients. They might be helpful, maybe. Anytime you say might, you also have to remember that also means might not. If you say may, that also equals may not. So you have to keep that in mind as well when you're talking about a proper human diet. I think that the next principle of a proper human diet is that it is by definition a lower carbohydrate diet. And I think that we see this in modern society with epidemics of type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, and obesity. These people are just eating too many carbohydrates for their personal physiology. Now, some people can tolerate more carbohydrates than others. It's a known concept in evolutionary science that in any population of a species, there's going to be variability. This is how, if something changes, we're not all wiped out immediately. And so some people can tolerate up to 100 total grams of carbohydrates a day and still be very metabolically healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy. Other people need to turn down what I call the carbohydrate intake knob down to 50 total grams a day. Some people need to turn down the knob even more to 20. And for some people like me who fatten very easily and develop prediabetes very easily, I have to keep the carbohydrate intake knob turned down as low as I possibly can, which is a carnivore diet. And there are several other principles of a proper human diet, but I think those are the main caveats. One final one I would add is that a proper human diet is by definition uninflammatory. And so this is where you get into some of that interpersonal variability. Some people may be able to eat kale and broccoli and Brussels sprouts a pound a day, and it's wonderful. They have no symptoms. Other people, if they eat one Brussels sprout, they're going to have 3 days of bloating and gas and abdominal discomfort. And so that variability within the species, which I love to talk about, the normal distribution curve. And you know what that is, Jesse, but just to quickly explain, out of any population of people, there are some people that can eat the hell out of veg, and it's fine. Most people in the population, if they eat too much veg, they're going to have bloating, they're going to have a skin issue, they're going to have joint issues, mental health degradation, they're going to have something. And then some people over on this end of that normal distribution curve need to avoid all the veg. And I don't really have problem with inflammation from vegetables. I have problems with too many carbohydrates from the vegetables. And so you not only have to think about the low carbohydrate, but you have to think about the uninflammatory as well. And with those 4 basic principles of a proper human diet, I think that the vast majority of people, 80%, maybe a little more, can immediately start to turn around the number on the bathroom scale. They can start to immediately reverse their elevated hemoglobin A1C or their elevated triglycerides. They can start to reverse their fatty liver. They can start to lower their blood pressure, and many other health markers immediately start to move back towards the normal range when they honor these principles.
You talked about the difference between people, and I think that's an important concept here. And I assume when you say that, you're talking from a genetic perspective, but I also want to layer on too, there's time of life perspective. So, we're going to go through different phases of life. And as we get older, our metabolism's going to naturally slow down. And also activity level. Somebody who is, out there exercising every day might be able to tolerate more carbohydrates than somebody who is more sedentary. So there's different variables that all mesh together to form this individual situation that you talk about.
Yeah, and there's several layers. I think genetics does play a role. This is greatly overhyped, especially by people who are selling genetic testing. You cannot just check your genetic code and say, aha, I should avoid onions and I should eat more, brassicas. No, that does not work that way. The second layer is epigenetics. And this is where a lot of people get hung up, because what your mom ate when you were in the womb, that matters epigenetically. What you were fed the first few years of your life matters epigenetically. And I think we see this in people on a ketogenic or a carnivore diet. They make wonderful gains in weight loss up to a point. And so even though their weight is not where they want it, all their metabolic markers are perfect, but yet they're holding this excess adipose tissue that they'd love to get rid of. And for many of them, that's their primary goal, right, Jesse? But they're like, I've lost 80 pounds and all my metabolic numbers are beautiful, but I can't lose this last 30, 40, 50 pounds. It's stuck. Now, sometimes it's an undiagnosed medical condition delaying that, but I think in some cases, it's your epigenetics. It's what your mom ate. It's what she fed you when you were very young. And it may even go back another generation, Jesse. So that's why one of the reasons why we need to give ourselves some grace, because in some cases, your epigenetic switches were thrown before you were even conscious. Now, the question then immediately is, can we unflip those epigenetic switches? And I think that we can to some degree, but I think that that you're not able to turn them off nearly as quickly as we'd like. In many cases, I think it takes months or years to calm your body's inflammation down and to calm your body's worry that, oh my God, we're losing fat too fast, right? And so your body will just put on the brakes and not allow any further fat metabolism until your body is satisfied. Okay, I guess everything's okay now. And then it'll say, okay, it's fine to lose a little more fat, because everybody needs to keep in mind that only in modern times, only in the last 200 years, out of our 3.5 million years of existence on this planet, our ancestors, only in the last 100 or 200 years has it become advantageous to lose fat. Never before in human history was that a good thing. It was always a bad omen if you were losing your body fat. Now, your body, as far as we know, does not know how overweight you are. It doesn't, because that's not something it ever had to contend with in the past, right? And so your body doesn't know if you're holding 10 pounds or 500 pounds of stored fat. It really can't tell as far as we know. Now, that could change with more research. And so, but anytime your body fat percentage is plummeting, as it will on a ketovore, carnivore diet, your body freaks out, because in all of our past, that was a bad thing. Either you were infected with something and couldn't hunt and gather, or you had an injury and you couldn't hunt and gather. Maybe your tribe kicked you out and you're on your own now. Maybe you fell in a hole and you broke your ankle and you can't get out. Always that was a bad thing. Only in the last century or two has it become a good thing to lose quite a bit of stored body fat. And then I think you're absolutely right. Your age in life matters. That's another layer of complexity. So when I was 18, Jesse, I could literally live on chocolate milk, Doritos, and Ding Dongs, and could not gain weight. Literally could not gain weight in my teens and 20s. Tried to put on muscle. My body was like, sure, skinny boy. Yeah, keep trying. That's not going to work. But about 32 to 37, my body said, oh, okay, you want to gain some weight? Here we go. And so I think time of life does absolutely matter. And I think back to the carbohydrate knob, the younger you are, the more total carbohydrates you can handle on average. The older you get, you need to probably be turning down that carbohydrate intake knob, or your waistline will suffer because of that. And then finally, exercise activity level is absolutely another layer. When you're younger, this matters less. As you get older, it matters more. And for a multitude of reasons. First and foremost, if you want to burn that stored fat, you're probably going to have to increase your activity level, not because exercising will help you burn that fat. The research is very clear in nutrition and medicine that exercise is a terrible method for burning fat, for losing fat. But, when people say they want to lose weight, what do they really mean? They want to lose fat. They don't want to lose muscle. They don't want to lose bone density. They don't want to lose connective tissue. They don't want to lose brain, liver, kidney, heart. They want to lose fat. And so exercise indirectly can help raise your metabolic level and help with that. But it's not going to directly help you lose weight. And then there's probably other layers of complexity that you have to layer on top of this to get what your proper human diet is for this moment in time.
To get a little bit more nuanced into that exercise piece, how do you feel about, I assume you're talking more from, say, like a cardio perspective and trying to, jog or go for a bike ride and burn off calories, in that period of time. But there is a lot of research showing that putting on muscle is a good thing when it comes to losing weight. So can we get into the nuances just to decipher between the two?
Yep. I think that chronic cardio, as my friend Mark Sisson has called it, is probably a uniformly either a bad thing or at least not a good thing. I don't think anybody should be spending an hour on the treadmill, the Stairmaster, jogging for hours. I think that is the health benefits are trivial and the risk of injury is very high. I don't think your time is well spent doing that. I think building muscle and strengthening your bones are excellent signals to your body that we need to be healthier. We need to get healthier. And if that involves burning some fat, that's fine. But especially to the older population, if you're especially over the age of 50, you don't need to be focusing on chronic cardio. You need to be focusing on lifting heavy things, running fast, biking fast, swimming fast for short intervals of time. I'm a huge fan of high intensity interval training. I think that's probably the way for everybody because, first of all, it doesn't waste a ton of time. Secondly, you can do it for free. So that's two very big, important things for this country boy with ADHD. I got to be able to do it fast. I got to not spend a lot of money. I got to not have to be put out. I don't want to have to drive to the gym and wait in line for the staff. I'm not doing any of that stuff. And so stuff that you can do at home for free that's going to give you immediate results. I'm a huge fan of that. And so I think that building muscle and building bone and all of the downstream ripple effects that gives your body and your brain, very important, the brain, you're going to improve your mental health and your physical health, but you're also setting yourself up to be that healthy, enviable elderly person one day because you're going to be elderly. You're either going to be elderly or you're going to be dead. That's your two options. There is no third option currently. Maybe my friend Dr. Sinclair will have a breakthrough moment and discover something. But right now, you're going to get old. And so you either get old and you look great and all your friends are envious and you feel amazing, or you get old and you're in a wheelchair or just permanently on the couch. Those are your two options. And so at some point, if you've lost enough bone strength and you've lost enough muscle mass, you're basically infirm. You're basically an invalid. You're basically there might be a point at which there's no return from that. And so I love when people get active. And what I have found in my years of doing this, both in my private practice and also online, is that very many people, especially if they're very inflamed and very obese, when they start trying to get healthy, exercise is not an option. If you weigh 350 pounds, I don't want you to go to the gym and jog. I also don't want you to try to go in the backyard and run wind sprints. You need to focus 100% of your effort, your motivation, your persistence, and your money on your food. Fix your food, fix your diet. And because at some point, when you've done that well enough, for long enough, the levels of inflammation will go down and your brain will be more motivated to do things and your body will be capable of doing those things. And it's very common for somebody who's just miserable when they start this way of eating. After a few months of this, they're like, you know what I did yesterday? I went for a walk. I haven't done that in years. It's almost like we're hardwired to go outside and play, but not if we're miserable and sick and overweight. Nobody wants to go outside and play in that condition. But when you've healed your metabolism enough and you've improved the health of your body, both mentally and physically, all of a sudden you return to this innate desire to go outside and play. And that's exactly how I talk about it. And I think that's how people should think about it. What do you enjoy doing? What do you want to do? Go do that and do it a little more aggressively each day or each week. Build your muscle, build your bones.
Let's talk about the diet piece from that perspective of somebody that's obese or type 2 diabetic. So they have a ton of extra weight on them. You mentioned quickly there the fact that they don't want to focus on exercise in the beginning. And we've talked about the knob for carbohydrates and you've given the spectrum of different dietary options. But let's talk to that person that's really determined right now and they want to make big dietary changes. It sounds like carnivore would be the move for that person because it's the most extreme the one way. But for somebody that is just getting into this, there might be something for doing it more gradual. So what I'm getting at is for the beginner, somebody who is going to make a big dietary switch, at least in the long run, how do they begin to move down that continuum?
Great question. So first and foremost, you need to understand the reason that Nisha, my wife, and I named this a proper human diet is because we don't want there to be any misconception that this is a weight loss diet or this is a quick fix. There is no such thing, okay, in reality. We'd love for there to be, but there is no such thing. What you have to come into this understanding is this is the way I'm going to eat for the rest of my life. This is a proper human diet. This is a species-specific diet for me. This is how I should have been eating all along. And many people say, well, how long do I have to do this before I can, add some and what they mean is junk back in. It's like, well, you can add junk back in anytime you're ready to start slowly poisoning yourself again. But I would highly recommend you stick to a proper human diet for the rest of your life if you'd like to live a proper human life, which means you're virile, vigorous, potent, mentally acute, mentally alert, aggressive when it's called for, patient and stoic when that's called for. All those things become much easier when your body's not inflamed and your brain's not inflamed. And so for many people, they'll jump right in, full bore carnivore. I don't advise against that. I think the carnivore diet is the most excellent elimination diet on the planet. But for many people, they don't need to do that, because if they do that, they'll fail. And there's several reasons for that. Probably the most prominent reason is carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. And so many people think that the standard American diet, there's nothing really wrong about that. I'm just eating too much. There's nothing bad about that. I've just been a glutton. My contention is no, there are several things that are bad about the standard American diet. When you go to the middle of the grocery store and you buy food from the middle aisles, which is where they put the food that they make the highest profit on, there are several things about that are unhealthy by definition. Maybe not by design, but by definition, they're unhealthy. They're inflammatory, and they're high in carbohydrates. They're full of either naturally occurring or added sugar. They're full of grains, which every human on the planet has some degree of inflammatory response to any of the grains, without exception. Or they've got vegetable seed oils, which human beings have only been eating for the last 100 years. And so again, back to that ancestral component, never in our history has the predominant fat in our diet been a vegetable seed oil or a plant butter or any of that kind of crap. That is a new technology that is being experimented in humans with. And I think we're seeing the results of that experiment with the epidemics of obesity, fatty liver, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes. And so I think some people should come into this slower. Maybe they should dip their toe into low carb and try to keep their total carbohydrates under 100 total grams of carbs a day. Not net carbs, because people who make highly palatable foods, they want to talk about net carbs because they know they can hide lots of carbohydrates in that calculation. So count total carbs and really try to focus on one ingredient, whole real foods. That's real food. That's what we've eaten for millions of years, not processed stuff that came from a factory, not powdered stuff. And so then after a while on low carb, you can go to 50 total grams a day or less. You can kind of move around on that spectrum once you've gotten in there, but you need to realize that spectrum is where human health is. If you want human health, that's where it's at. It's not the latest fad diet. And so whether you come at this full bore or whether you come at this in a graduated fashion, like I'm going to do low carb for a couple of months, then I'm going to try keto, see how it goes. Either of those is a fine strategy depending on your personality. I think that's very important as well. But realize that carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms is a very real thing. Sugar addiction withdrawal symptoms is a very real thing. And so most people have somewhere between 3 and 14 days of flu-like symptoms when they cut the carbs out, especially the highly processed carbs, because they are addicted to that. They have used those highly processed foods as a dopamine hit for long enough, for enough years, that when they stop eating those foods and they have that swing in dopamine levels, you can feel kind of blah, feel kind of down, feel kind of just not good. You can have all of the withdrawal symptoms that you would have if you were stopping smoking or you were stopping alcohol or you were stopping some other illicit drug. You will have body aches. You could feel like you're coming down with the flu. You could have trouble sleeping, or you could be somnolent during the daytime. You can have mental fogginess, all these things. And so people name this the keto flu. I think that's a misnomer. I think you should call it what it is, carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. Anybody who's tried keto is like, I couldn't do that. I felt like crap. Get on the internet and look up what are the symptoms of nicotine withdrawal. What are the symptoms of alcohol withdrawal? And what you're going to find is that your carbohydrate addiction withdrawal symptoms mimic that list almost exactly. You're going to be irritable. You're going to be grumpy. You're not going to feel good. All those things. And I think that is for many people, that's a wake up call when they're like, I don't think I'm addicted to Lucky Charms. I just think I like them a lot, right? But when you stop them and you go through this period of, damn, I'm literally withdrawing from Lucky Charms and all the other foods that the American Diabetes Association and the Tufts School of Nutrition tell me are really good foods. I'm actually withdrawing from them. That's probably not a good sign that they're actually the proper food for me. And so if people know that going in, Jesse, they know that up front, I'm probably going to withdraw from this. Then they're prepared for that. They're also not misled by influencers out there who would love to say, see, that's not good for you. See how bad you feel? You need to get off this immediately. You need to go back to eating the foods that I endorse and the highly processed, protein bar, which is really a carbohydrate bar. You need to go back to eating that. And because as soon as you go back to eating that, you'll feel better again. And you will feel better again because that's well known in the addiction model that if someone who hasn't smoked for 4 days, they're going to feel like crap. But if they smoke a cigarette, guess what? They feel better. Does that mean they should just give up and go back to smoking? Of course not. The alcoholic, after 3 days of no alcohol at all, is going to feel yucky. Does that mean they should go back to drinking so they feel better? Obviously, the answer is no. And so many people aren't aware of the carbohydrate sugar addiction model. But once they get that under their belt, and once they understand this is a way of eating, this is lifelong. If you want good health until being very, very, very old, you need to eat this way. When you get those two concepts under your belt, all of a sudden this becomes almost self-evident. This is the way I need to eat, and I need to push through those carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. Push through those for 3 to 14 days until I get on the other side of those symptoms. Because on the other side of those symptoms, that's where good health is.
So other than giving people the heads up that they're going to likely suffer with these carb withdrawals and going slow into cutting back the carbs, anything else they can do if they are making this dietary switch to ease that period of time?
Yeah. So make sure that you're getting plenty of electrolytes and minerals. Make sure that you're getting plenty of salt. I'm not a big endorser of products because I'm not here to make $1 million. I'm here to try to improve the metabolic health of 1 million people. But these two I do talk about sometimes because they will give you the electrolytes and the minerals that your body needs. That will decrease the symptoms of carbohydrate withdrawal. It's not going to eliminate them, but it's going to make them less severe. Getting plenty of salt in your diet. And I've got multiple YouTube videos talking about salt's not bad for you. If you salt your food to taste, there's going to be no negative health effects from that. Every mammal on the planet, without exception, seeks out salt and preferentially will lick certain muds or certain rocks that are high in sodium and chloride. These things are mandatory for proper mammalian health. You have to have salt, and this is one of the reasons people on a low salt or no salt diet feel miserable, is because their body is suffering because they don't have enough salt. But for the carbohydrate withdrawal, get plenty of electrolytes, get plenty of minerals, get plenty of salt, get plenty of sleep, of course. Try to be a little more active, always keeping in mind where you're at on your journey. And then eat when you're hungry and eat until you're full. A proper human diet allows you to do those things. And for many people out there, they're like, no, dude, you don't understand. If you tell me to eat until I'm full, I'll weigh 800 pounds. Yeah, eating the highly processed crap, you will. Yes, definitely. But eating a proper human diet that adheres to all the principles of a proper human diet, you now get to eat until you're comfortably stuffed, just like every other wild mammal on the planet does on a daily basis, whether food is scarce or whether food is plentiful. They never get obese unless it is part of their annual cycle where they're going to go into hibernation. Then what do? They up the carb intake. They up the sugar intake so they can develop fatty liver on purpose, develop a thick layer of body fat on purpose, and then go into hibernation. That's literally the only mammals on the planet that become obese if they're eating a species-specific diet, right? Now, if they have access to human garbage dumps, they can get really fat. But if they're eating their proper ancestral diet, they don't get obese unless it serves their needs as a species on an annual basis.
So we know salt, when somebody is transitioning their diet, can be a good hack to help with that transition. But salt in a general sense, for somebody out there who has, say, made the dietary shift and they found their comfortable level of carbohydrates, how do they know they're getting enough salt on a regular basis? Do they just salt their food to taste and that's good? Or are you somebody that advocates, supplementing with salt on top of that? Or how do you go about figuring that out?
There's this new instrument that has just been invented. I've got an affiliate link. We'll post it down below. It's called the human tongue. Oh, it's not new. It's been around for millions of years. So salt to taste is my principle. And I think for 85, 90% of people, salting your food until it tastes perfectly salted. That's the way you're going to know, because if you need more salt, you're going to crave salt. If you're eating too much salt, salt's going to taste too salty. And Nisha and I, we've got a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old running around the house, and we have salt rocks that I'll just leave it laying on the floor. And we're also not germaphobes. You'll find that out if you delve into our personal life. But Bonnie will crawl by the salt rock some days. She's 7 months old, Bonnie Blue. She won't touch the salt rock, but other days she'll pick that salt rock up and she'll lick it for 3 minutes. And then she'll put it down and move on. And I think that perfectly mirrors every other mammal's behavior on the planet, and also mimics our behavior hundreds of thousands of years ago. And so many doctors and dietitians, if they have not studied anthropology and paleoanthropology, they're like, what do you mean we need salt? What do you mean people have gone out of their way to get salt? I don't even know what you're talking about. Salt is bad. The American Heart Association says we need to eat a low salt diet. How can you even argue with them based on some appeal to nature that every mammal on the planet seeks out salt, and so did we. So in my study of anthropology and paleoanthropology and reading explorer accounts from the 16 and 1700s, every Aboriginal population that they encountered, without exception, did two things. When they killed a mammal, they never drain the blood and waste it. Either they don't drain it at all, therefore the meat and all the tissue is still full of the blood. But the majority of the time, they actually capture the blood and they use the blood. And there, in some countries, there's still, in Poland, you can get blood soup. In many different cultures, there's still blood on the menu. But in America, where Kellogg's and Kraft and Kraft Heinz and Mondelez and other billion-dollar corporations are in charge of our food supply, blood is gross. Blood is perhaps a sin to even eat blood. You want to avoid blood at all costs. You don't even get it on your hands, much less eat it. But our ancestors did not have blocks and tackle that they could hoist a 3,000-pound megafauna up and drain it after they killed it. The blood was still in there. And in many cases, they went out of their way to capture the blood and either drink it immediately or use it to cook with or to store it for later use, because guess what blood is very, very rich in? Salt and electrolytes, right? And so without exception, when you see an explorer encounter an indigenous population that has not been touched by modern society at all, they're always eating the blood. They're either drinking it or they're cooking with it. They're saving it. They're using it. In some cases, they fertilize their crops with it. So then all that nutrition's now in the plants, right? But they were getting salt and electrolytes on a daily basis because blood was part of their daily diet. And if you haven't really made a study of this, that is not something that you would expect. You would think, yeah, there's some weird cultures that eat blood or whatever, but that's rare. No, it was ubiquitous before the 1700s. Every indigenous species or tribe or a collection of people that we encountered, they were eating blood without exception. And often only when they were made to stop doing that because they were taught that that was a sin, or they were taught that it's dangerous or unhealthy or gross. Only then begrudgingly would they stop eating the blood. And so, if you tell somebody in modern society, Jesse, oh, you need to start eating blood, they're going to be like, dude, what? That's kooky. That's too much. And so that's the only reason that I helped Keto Chow design the electrolytes and minerals, is because it's currently, Overton's window is shifted far too far into everything needs to be sterile and everything needs to be made in a factory. it freaks people out. And so people aren't ready to hear that message yet. And so let's move Overton's window just a little bit and let's talk about minerals and electrolytes. Let's talk about salt. And then when they're used to that, I think naturally people say, well, I wonder where people got electrolytes and minerals and salt. Well, they were drinking groundwater, number one, which I don't advise today because our systems are too fragile. We can't tolerate the parasites that might be in, the creek water on my farm. Although I am going to start experimenting with it and share that and see how that goes. Also, we never drink groundwater. We never eat blood ever, and so we've lost the two major ways that we used to get minerals, electrolytes, and salt in our diet. So we've got to replace that artificially for now, but hopefully one day when there are enough regenerative farmers and regenerative ranchers out there raising animals and plants properly again, we won't need these products at all. It'll just be in the food again like it used to be.
And Ken, are you somebody who goes right back to the source and consumes blood as part of your diet?
Not yet, but we're currently running sheep, quail, chicken, turkey. I'm about to get some Idaho pasture pigs for the farm, and we are absolutely have full intentions of implementing blood back into our diet, as all of our ancestors did for the last 3.5 million years. It seems gross by modern standards, but it's actually ancestrally appropriate. And it's actually what every single one of your ancestors, you watching this right now, listening to this, every single one of your ancestors before 15,000 years ago ate meat and ingested blood and drank groundwater. There was no alternative. You either did that or you starved to death. And so the reason that's so important is that's the diet we evolved on for at least the last 3.5 million years. That diet is what made us what we are. That's why it's important. This is not just an appeal to nature, which is a logical fallacy. I'm not appealing to nature. Oh, it's natural. Not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is evolutionary. This is ancestrally appropriate nutrition for the human organism.
And you mentioned the fact that groundwater these days isn't safe, but what about bottled water, mineral waters like Pellegrino and some of the better quality ones out there that are in glass? Can we get some of that salt and other minerals by consuming those?
A microscopic amount. If you look at the nutrition data on these mineral waters, first I would try really hard to find one that's very, very low in fluoride or fluoride free. I think that's a big deal that doesn't get talked about enough. But what we do is we'll make reverse osmosis water here at the house. We've got an under sink model, and then I'll add some electrolytes and minerals to it. So we basically clean the water that's been dirtied by modern technology, and that's a whole podcast on its own. How atrocious some of our water supplies are, and then we put the minerals and electrolytes back in, and we sometimes put that in our soda stream, so it's now sparkling. Sometimes we just drink it still. But also, I'm a great fan of Gerald Steiner of Topo Chico, since they fixed their plastic tubing issue and the PFASs are out of there now, hopefully. At least that's what their press release said. Even Perrier, all of them, I try to get them in glass if I can, because I think ingesting too many nanoplastics and microplastics, I think that's probably a big thing, although we don't have the research to prove it yet. I think, they're now finding nanoplastics in amniotic fluid in pregnant women. They're finding nanoplastics in breast milk. It has not been proven dangerous yet. It has not been proven bad, but I think they're probably, it'd probably be difficult to get research money to do a big causation study for that, because there are too many billions of dollars being made on the back of plastic, which is a petroleum product. Probably going to have trouble getting your department head to sign off on such a research study. And so, we go back to the ancestral principle. When did we start consuming lots of nanoplastics and microplastics? 50 years ago. Before that, did we ever consume them? Absolutely not. 0%. Before really 50 or 100 years ago, it was not a thing on this planet, but now it's ubiquitous. That's probably a problem. And so I love Gerald Steiner and Topo Chico and San Pellegrino and Perrier. I try to always get them in glass bottles. And I think you mentioned that as well.
For somebody who is making the changes we're talking about today, and they're going to limit some of these toxins, including the plastics, that's all fine and good from here forward. But what about all the accumulation from the environment to this point? And we're going to get more into the diet piece here, but is cleaning up the diet and cleaning up the environment enough to let the body detox what's already been built up? Or for somebody that is jumping in, like we're talking about here, and say there's somebody who has all that extra weight or they don't and they're just cleaning up their life, do you recommend any kind of detox to get to baseline, or how do you go about looking at that?
So I think there is a degree of detoxification that happens. I do not think that any detox product on the market is necessary. I think they are 100% uniformly a waste of people's money. And if resources are limited, I'd advise you to spend your money on real food, because you have these two very technological organisms in your body already called the liver and called the kidneys. And their literal job, one of their hundreds of jobs, is to purify and detoxify your system. That's what they're for. That's one of their major functions. And so when you stop ingesting the toxins, whether that's nanoplastics, whether that's forever chemicals, which are so ubiquitous now, I don't even know if we can avoid those. The inflammatory stuff in your food, the too many carbohydrates, I think immediately your body starts to detoxify itself. And you're basically, what you're doing by eating a proper human diet is you're giving it a chance to catch up. You're not poisoning your body anymore daily. And I think that's hugely important. And that's why some people, before they start a proper human diet, they feeling miserable. That's their baseline. They don't understand how miserable they really are. They've forgotten what feeling great even feels like. And when they start this way of eating, it gives them a chance to lower their levels of inflammation and to start to detoxify these chemicals. And so I think the vast majority of the detoxification is handled by your liver and your kidneys when you give them a chance to catch up. When you stop basically drinking the toxins out of a fire hydrant and you stop the ingestion, I think they immediately start to catch up. And you start to feel better. And so I'm not an advocate of any of the detox things out there. I don't think they work well enough to justify the expense.
So we've talked about when it comes to quality, we've gotten deep into the water perspective, talking about RO water and getting carbonated waters in glass. But how do you think about quality when it comes to food? There are a lot of different options now with non-GMO, organic, grass-fed meats. How much of a priority are those for you when it comes to feeding you and your family?
Not much of a priority. I think they do matter to some degree. And typically when you really tease down into the research, you find so we'll use grass-finished meat, for example. It typically turns out to be somewhere between 1% and 5% higher in omega-3 fatty acids and maybe some vitamins and minerals. It's not a huge difference. And so if you can afford grass-fed, grass-finished, panda massaged meat, then I think you should buy that, because that's going to also stimulate the economy to produce more of that, because we all vote with our dollars every day, and many of us are voting for the wrong things, aren't we? And so, yes, if you can afford organic, non-GMO, grass-finished everything, then definitely spend the money. But some of us just can't afford that, and that's why I have a YouTube video called Cheap Carnivore. If literally all you can afford is bologna and hot dogs and Spam, you can improve your health with those. Now, you may not be able to completely optimize your health, but it's gonna be a great improvement over eating the other highly processed carbohydrate inflammatory crap that you were eating before. And people need to understand that, because, the economy is not great right now, and many of us think it may get worse. And so being able to afford food is a big deal. And we can get off into all kinds of socio-political whirlpools here if you want to. I'm happy to do that. But over the last 20 or 30 years, food has been cheaper in modern society than it's ever been in the history of humanity. Food procurement used to be life and death, right? And then it was like, it's 50% of your income to feed your family. And then it was for many, many centuries, it was 30% of your income roughly. That's what you spent on food every day, every week, every month. It was 30% of what you produced. You had to use that to either eat it or to procure your food. And for the last few decades, it's been 5 or 10% of your income for many people. And that's very spoiling. That'll spoil you. And so all of a sudden, when eggs and meat start to float back to what their proper price should be, for many people, that feels like price gouging. But they don't understand two things. First of all, you weigh real food by the pound, and you weigh highly processed food by the ounce or by the serving. That's the first thing. And so when you take this box of Cheerios, that's 18 ounces, right? It's like, oh, that's a lot of food. Look at that big box. Well, if you took this and crushed it down and got rid of all the puffed air, it's maybe a cup and a half of actual food and nutrient void food at the same time. Does that make sense? You don't weigh this by the pound. If they sold this by the pound, nobody would buy it because it's about $27 a pound.
That's so interesting.
Right? And so many things are like that. The protein bars, this market is huge right now. And people think, oh, I need a protein bar, which is usually a carbohydrate bar if you look at the nutrition panel. But for some of these, like the Cliff Bar and like the Quest Bar, they're $25, $30 a pound. If you calculate the price that way instead of just calculating by the bar. But whereas eggs, if you calculate how much does a pound of eggs cost, it's like $3 or $4. Super cheap. If you look at beef, it's so much per pound. And it may be like shit, it's $16 a pound, but it's still way cheaper than a Cliff Bar is per pound. It's way cheaper. And so even though the prices of real food have been going up, they're still much cheaper if you calculate them by the pound and then also calculate by nutrient density. This is so nutrient void, they have to fortify it, which means adding factory-made vitamins and minerals back to it. Well, that should tell you something right off the bat. You've never seen a fortified egg. You've never seen a fortified pound of ground beef. You've never seen a fortified pack of bacon. You don't have to fortify those things because they're rich in vitamin minerals by definition. And so I think that people worry about the price of food, and you should, but at the same time, you have to understand the word food has a definition. Food means it's full of nutrition, and it doesn't cause inflammation, and it causes your muscles and bones to get stronger, and it causes you to have good mental health. That's the definition of food. Food should be, by definition, good for you. So then you're like, well, is this really food or not? I would opine that this is not food. Or you could say it's a starvation food. I think that's another great way to look at this. If you're starving to death, eat all the Cheerios, eat all the grains, eat all the sugar. They will keep you from starving to death. But if your goal is optimal health, if it's ultimate health, this is not the food you want to be eating. You want to be eating nutrient-dense, ancestrally appropriate, uninflammatory food that has all the vitamins and minerals in there. That's real food, and that's going to cost you a certain percentage of your daily or monthly income. Sorry, but yeah, food is going to your percentage of your income that you spend on food is probably going to go up over the next few years. And then finally, one of the reasons I love a proper human diet so much, the concept and the principles, is because it spurs local farmers and local ranchers. Because I'm a country boy, I'm a redneck. And where I come from, there's always a risk that if you mislead someone, they will come and have a talk with you. Okay? That's a euphemism. That means they will come and they'll get you by your shirt collar and they'll say, hey, dude, you lied to me. And so this local farming and this local ranching, you actually know the guy that raised your beef or that raised your sheep. You actually know the name of the person, which I love that relationship. And I think I want to encourage that every time I can. But it also, the implicit assumption that is, if you mislead me, I know where you live. I'll come and find you. Anybody know who the board of directors is for General Mills or Kellogg's? You don't know them. You can't get your hands on them. If they screw you out of your health, what's your recourse? You can maybe find an attorney and sue them. They'll have 18 corporate lawyers show up and have the case dismissed. But if you bought your beef from a local rancher, you know that guy. You can either go to him in person and thank him or her Give them a hug. Send them a Christmas card. Or if they mislead you and make you sick, they're right down the road. And so I love that the principles of a proper human diet are spurring local farmers and local ranchers. People are starting to look. I wonder if anybody raises pastured eggs around me. I wonder if there's a local pig farmer where I can say, hey, I just want my pig to eat grass and acorns and grub worms. I don't want you to give them any grain. You start to look for that stuff, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm happy to pay a little bit of a premium because it's real food. It's nutrient dense. It mimics the food that my ancestors have been eating for millions of years. So there's a lot tied up in this proper human diet movement that I think is very, very important, that not only is going to strengthen people's bodies and minds, but it's going to start to strengthen local economies and spur production of actual real food. And so, but currently, if you live in an urban center, you're going to buy food from the grocery. You got no choice, right? You can't take a day off work and go out in the country and find a guy who's going to raise you a pig and some broccoli. You got to buy it. And so I think do the best you can. And that's another principle of a proper human diet is all you can do is all you can do, Jesse. Right? There are forever chemicals in our atmosphere, in our groundwater now. There's glyphosate. You want a good source of glyphosate? Here you go. But there's glyphosate in everything now. There's nothing you can do about that. But the one thing you don't want to do is give up, because I think there's a huge space for you to improve your metabolic health and your mental health by eating a proper human diet. Can you reach perfection? Probably not, because the corporations have poisoned the environment so much. But you can do drastically better than you're currently doing by choosing better options every time you put food in your face.
As you're talking there, it gets me thinking about the two different aspects that come with buying better food. Part of it is the fact that you're going to get possibly some more nutrition within that food. And of course, if you're having something that's not processed like beef versus Cheerios, you're getting a lot more nutrition. But I'm talking about comparing like conventional beef to grass-fed beef. The other aspect is what you're not getting. So you're not getting, certain, say the beef has been fed grain that's moldy if you're getting conventional beef, or there's glyphosate on that grain, and then that accumulates in the tissue that you're consuming. So you have to look at it from, what am I getting by spending more, and what am I not getting?
And that's a great point. And so let's talk about the cow example. Cows also, they have 3 filters that they run all their food through. First is the multi-chamber stomach, because they're ruminants, right? And this filters out tons of toxins. And that's why you can feed a cow an improper diet and they still don't die. And they wind up producing some of the best human food on the planet. But they also have a liver, which detoxifies the hell out of their diet. They also have kidneys, which helps the liver detoxify this stuff. And so when you've run this inflammatory, slow poison food like grains through cows, they've got 3 filters to filter out the inflammatory toxins and just the flat out toxins, the mold spores, all of this stuff. And so when you eat that pack of fatty meat, that cow's already done a lot of the filtering for you, right? Even the most poorly fed beef is still very, very healthy for the average human to consume. Very, very healthy. Much healthier than any processed food that you can buy in the unrefrigerated section. So basically anything in a plastic bag or a cardboard box, the cheapest beef you can buy at your supermarket is way better for you, not only with regards to the nutrition profile, which you touched on, but also that cow's already applied 3 filters to the food that it was fed so that it's left with much, much healthier protein and fat that then you can consume. Right. So I love to, and let me just be very clear. I'm 100% opposed to the deplorable confinement feeding operations and feeding cows improper food. 100% opposed to that. But our alternative is, Jesse, what are we going to do about that right now? What do we do about that today? Well, you start looking for a local rancher and a local farmer. You start buying local pastured eggs, because now you're voting with your dollars to support that instead of voting with your dollars to support the 4 big meat processors in the United States. It's only 4. People don't realize that. There's only, and they're probably there's going to be a consolidation. Then there'll be only 3. These guys care about profits and turning a profit for their shareholders and being in compliance with their board of directors. They don't give a damn about your health. The one thing they don't want to do is kill you quickly, because if they kill you quickly, then that's a lawsuit that they'll probably lose. But if they cause inflammation and kill you slowly over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they don't care about that, because nobody's going to file a lawsuit about that. And so I am 100% for animals being treated properly, properly raised, properly fed. But if we just said, that's it, we actually have an example of this in a foreign country that a few years ago said, that's it, only organic vegetables. We're not using any pesticide anymore. And I won't name the name of the country, but that became law in this kind of dictatorial run country. Now they have mass starvation. They're literally dependent on handouts from other countries to keep their entire population from starving to death. And that's what would happen to any country that too quickly implemented this. And so I'm 100% opposed to that, but currently we're stuck with that because of the mistakes made by our elders and our predecessors. We're now stuck in that model until we can stimulate the growth of regenerative ranching and regenerative farming and get that scaled up to the point where we can all eat that. There's no way around this right now. And so for the poorest among us, you're going to be stuck with the cheap meat at the supermarket, which is not perfect, but it's way the hell better than what you were eating before. And then for people who are of means, that can buy pastured eggs and pastured pork and pastured grass-finished beef, do that, because you're actually going to stimulate that economy, and eventually that'll lead to price decreases where other people can afford it as well.
So coming back to this continuum of the proper human diet, it sounds like the entry point is getting your carbs down to 100 grams a day, gross. And then on the other end of that diet is the carnivore diet. For somebody who hasn't been counting carbs and conscious of how many carbs they're eating on a regular basis, just to get a ballpark idea, comparison, what would you say the average American is consuming in amount in grams of carbohydrates versus that 100 grams?
The average U.S. adult is consuming somewhere between 200 and 400 total grams of carbohydrates each and every day. And for many of them, a very high percentage of their carbohydrate intake is highly processed carbohydrates, which are basically made of 3 ingredients: sugar, some grain that's been ground up and highly processed, and vegetable oil. For many Americans especially, that is over 50% of their daily diet. Now, it may come in the form of a bagel for breakfast, right? A pizza crust, the pizza slice for lunch, and then some kind of bread, even if it's whole grain bread. But if you actually crunch the numbers, over half of their diet is coming from sugars, grains, and vegetable seed oils. And so that's why when I first started doing this social media thing, 5 years ago, my first 3 steps to adopting a proper human diet is get rid of all sugar from your diet. Definitely added sugar, but also eventually natural sugar as well. Number 2, get rid of all the grains, all of them. They are starvation foods. They're not optimization foods. And then step 3, get rid of all of the vegetable seed oils. And so there are 3 nut or fruit oils: avocado, olive, coconut, which don't seem to be as inflammatory. They don't seem to be as bad. But many people, I'm one of these people, all my fat comes from animal sources. I don't consume any plant fat whatsoever anymore. It's all butter, beef tallow, lard, sheep's tallow, chicken fat. That's 100% of my fat intake. And again, does that mimic the fat intake of our ancestors for the last 3.5 million years? Yeah, that's where they got 100% of their fat. And don't come at me with olives and avocados, because 15,000 years ago, those were pitty and tiny. They consumed them, sure, if they found them, but they were not what we consider a modern avocado, a modern olive. They didn't exist. And nobody was grinding up grains and trying to express oil from grass seeds or from seeds 15,000 years ago. And so you say, well, why this arbitrary 15,000 year cutoff? Well, that's well before the agricultural revolution. And so if you just say, okay, what's the percentage of time for humans on this planet, our ancestors from 15,000 years ago back to 3.5 million years ago. That's 99.99% of our time on this planet. So for 99.9% of our time on this planet, we never ate sugar, ever, unless we found some ripe berries. We never ate grains, ever, unless we were literally starving. And we didn't even have access to vegetable seed oils because you have to have a factory to process those. We never ate those. And so, again, people might call that an appeal to nature. But what I call it is being honest and true to our DNA. That's what we are as a species.
Earlier, you mentioned you're one of those people that easily puts on weight. And it sounds like you're carnivore, or you're at least highly swayed toward that end of the spectrum. Are you at this point 100% carnivore?
I'm very close to 100% carnivore. Maybe once a week, I'll have some veg. Once a year, we've got blueberry bushes on the farm here. We've got an apple tree, we've got a pear tree, plum tree that Nisha's grandfather planted years ago. And when those are ripe, me and Beckett, we'll go out. He's my 3-year-old. We'll go out and we'll eat those every morning until they're gone. And that's usually a week or two, right? And so for 50 or 51 weeks out of the year, I don't eat any veg whatsoever. Maybe once a week I'll have, a Brussels sprout off somebody else's plate, but 99% of what I ingest is animal foods. And that includes all the fat, that includes all the protein. And then there are a few carbohydrates in plant foods, but it's very, very tiny compared to any plant food.
And as somebody who is on a really strict diet, carnivore-ish, how do you feel when you start including the fruit for that narrow period of time during the year? Do you feel like a big difference? I'm assuming you'd feel a big difference mentally, physically.
I feel the difference in my waistline. And so when the fruit is ripe, I'll put on 2 or 3 pounds in that 2 weeks just from eating the fructose and the excess sugar, because the pears are delicious, the blueberries are delicious. So we also have blackberries as well, but that stuff's delicious. And I think that's exactly why human beings enjoy that stuff so much, is because we used to use that as a tool. When the fruit is ripe, that basically means winter's coming. And many people think, oh yeah, but not in the tropics, not around the equator. Yeah, if you talk to somebody who actually lives in these places, that fruit is seasonal as well. And so we ate the fruit when it was ripe to store body fat for the winter. And we don't hibernate like some mammals, but we do go through a period of food scarcity every year in the winter in all the temperate zones. And that's a large percentage of where we live on the planet, is the temperate zones. And so we learned how to use that fructose and that sugar to put on some weight so that if the winter was really sparse, we wouldn't starve to death. Now, other people, when they eat plants, they start to have their skin condition flares up, or their joint condition flares up, or their gut condition flares up, or they notice a deterioration in their mental health. I don't have those. I'm just the fat white guy. I'm the guy that if I eat too many carbs, I'm going to get fat. And it'll no longer be this button in danger of popping. It'll be the one down over my belly button, which that's how it was back when I weighed 297 pounds. And my wife bought me this shirt. I apologize for this. She likes them to be tight. I don't, not so much, but yeah. And so I think it's super important to try these trials. I don't want you to blindly believe me ever. If you do a 90-day carnivore diet, beef, butter, bacon, eggs, or include seafood, include whatever, after those 90 days, I want you to experiment with carbs, because this is the one science experiment that you have control over. And it's also the one that you're going to either profit from or suffer from if you get it wrong. And so I think it's never a sin to say, okay, I've heard of this guy. He says that his carnivore diet, he eats lots of fruit and honey. Well, after you've been strict carnivore for 90 days, I want you to try that, because it may be that as long as you keep your total carbs under 100 a day, you can eat fruit and honey every day, maybe, but you need to try it and see. And so many people, when they try that, they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. It works good for me. Other people are like, oh, hell no. I started to gain weight immediately when I started to eat that fruit every day. I don't want to be fat anymore. I've already been fat for 30 years, Jesse. I don't want to be fat no more. And so I'm just going to stick to strict carnivore. But those kind of experiments, I think, are very valuable for people to do. And it kind of mimics how we lived in the past. Once again.
If somebody wants to experiment and go all the way to the end of the spectrum and do strict carnivore for a period of time at least, what does that look like? I know salt is obviously part of that, salting our food like we talked about before to taste. Meats, you mentioned butter, and you mentioned all the different types of animal fat that you consume. Let's talk about what falls under that strict carnivore umbrella.
Yeah, so strict carnivore is anything that comes from an animal. And so depending on where you are in the world, that could be lizard. I also, let me add, I think that insects are carnivore. Humans have eaten insects for millions of years. I don't advocate that. I don't think that you should be forced to eat the bugs. But we've always eaten insects. And whether you want to eat them or not, I think is your decision and your choice. But that is a carnivore option. I like to talk about beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, because it's very easy to remember. It's very affordable if you calculate how much it's costing you per pound of food. It's hard to forget. Then that also obviates all the questions of, well, is this carnivore? If it ain't beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, don't eat it, right? And then some people do BBBE and S, which is seafood. So sardines and mackerel and anchovies, the smaller cold water fish that don't eat enough other fish to accumulate the mercury. I think that's also very viable for people to do, and also very affordable. And so basically, if it comes out of an animal's cloaca, or it comes off an animal's body, or it comes out of an animal's teat, then I think it is carnivore. Now, we have to talk about milk, because a lot of people will say, well, milk is carnivore. Yes, it is. But we have to go back and say, why do mammals give their babies milk? It's so they can grow and gain weight as quickly as possible. That's what milk is for, and it's perfectly designed to help you grow and gain weight. And so if you're finished growing, all milk's going to help you do is grow, right? Grow the direction you don't want to. And so this applies even to raw milk. I'm a big fan of raw milk. If you're going to drink milk, try to find a reliable source of raw milk. I think it is much less bad for adults to drink. Now, if you're a human being from 0 days of age up to 5 or 6 or 7 years of age, I think you'll benefit greatly from drinking goat's milk, maybe even cow's milk, but definitely goat's milk and sheep's milk. Camel milk is also a great source depending on where you live in the world. You're going to benefit from that because you're still growing. But the vast majority of humans, over 3/4 of human beings alive on the planet right now, do not have lactase persistence. At about 5, 6, 7 years of age, they lose their ability to break down lactose. I'm not talking about, a few people in some weird country. I'm talking about 75% of the adult population on the planet is lactose intolerant. And we talk about that like it's a disease. We'll have lactose intolerance. That's the normal state. At 3 different times in evolution have human beings adapted to probably what was a starvation situation. And they adapted and developed lactase persistence, that's the enzyme that breaks down lactose. That's happened 3 different times, twice in Africa and once in the Nordic Scandinavian area. So we know we have an ability to do that, but the vast majority of us do not have lactase persistence. And so milk as an adult, even raw milk, is full of lactase, and that's going to lead to inflammation. That's going to lead to weight gain. And so if you're under the age of 5, 6, or 7, yes, drink your milk. Absolutely. But if you're above that age, unless you're wanting to grow and gain weight as quickly as possible, and more than likely develop some degree of inflammation, I would highly encourage you to avoid milk. There's a new study just out in the nutrition literature that people with eosinophilic esophagitis, it gets drastically better when they just stop all dairy. And so the reason beef, butter, bacon, and eggs contains butter is because that's just the fat component of the dairy, right? You take away the lactose and the other sugars, and you take away the proteins of the milk. You're left with just the fat component of the milk. And for some people, they're so sensitive to the dairy proteins that they have to actually clarify the butter and just only use ghee, right? But the vast majority of people can eat butter, and if there's not enough of the dairy protein, the caseins in the whey, to cause inflammation. And so beef, butter, bacon, and eggs is a great place for people to start because they can remember that the food's relatively cheap. And one of the beautiful things about a carnivore diet is you get to eat until you're comfortably stuffed. You don't have to portion control. You don't have to you don't have to calorie restrict. You get to eat until you're comfortably stuffed. Again, mimicking how our ancestors lived forever and how every other wild mammal on the planet lives. They eat until they're full, then they stop eating. And for some people, when I say that, that sounds almost like a revolutionary statement, Jesse. But don't we all breathe when we need to breathe? And if we don't need to breathe, we don't breathe as much? Yeah. Our heart beats as much as we need it to be. And if it's beating too fast, it slows down. If it's not beating fast enough, it speeds up. We don't have to think about that consciously. And it's my opinion that if you're eating on the proper human diet spectrum for you, you don't have to portion control. You don't have to count calories and restrict. You don't have to semi-starve yourself to maintain good health. Just like every other mammalian creature on the planet, if you're eating a species-specific diet, you get to eat until you're full. And then you don't eat again until you're hungry. And so also, this cuts out all the mindless snacking, the social eating. If you're not hungry, you don't eat. That's physiologically true to what we are. And so I think that is freeing for so many people because they've literally been portion controlling and calorie restricting for decades only to meet with failure, right? But they're still doing that. And so when they come to real whole food keto or ketovore or carnivore, they still want to, they feel like that's required. Oh, I can only eat just this much and so many ounces. No. You get to trust your hunger again. And for some people, that's terrifying, Jesse. For the first few weeks, they're like, no, you don't know me. You think I can't binge on beef, butter, bacon, and eggs? Watch me. And I've actually had YouTube channels take me up on that because I offer one YouTube channel $1,000. It's a husband and wife team, the Two Crazy Ketos. I said, I'll give you $1,000 if you eat nothing but beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, and you can gain weight. And they're like, challenge accepted. And I didn't make a bet with them because I didn't want their $1,000. I just offered that reward. And after a month of gorging on beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, they both lost more weight even than they had lost on keto. And so I think the reason that kind of thing works is because we're going back to honoring the physiology of what this organism is. Inherently, if you're eating enough protein and enough fat, you're going to put your satiety hormones in a position where only if you're at the county carnival's hot dog eating contest trying to win $100 are you going to be able to overeat meat, fat, and protein. It's very, very hard to do. And you might do it for a week or two, but you're just going to naturally stop that inappropriate behavior when your choices are beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. You can eat as much as you want, but that's your 4 choices. And for many people, that simplifies it to the point, and it also frees them. Like, oh, I'm not going to gain 50 pounds if I eat as much as I want in a month or 90 days because Dr. Berry promised me that wouldn't happen. And for the vast majority of people at the end of that 90-day experiment, they're very thankful and very grateful to now know that about their physiology. You can trust your body if you're feeding it the right food. You can trust it not to betray you and not to go up 4 pant sizes in 90 days if you're not starving yourself. And I think that's very powerful. And for many people, that's when they realize, oh, this is not a diet. This is literally, I get to eat this way for the rest of my life. I get to eat until I'm comfortably stuffed because I haven't done that in many cases, since I was a teenager. I had to starve myself or I would get as big as a house. I don't have to do that anymore. How freeing is that for millions of people around the world?
So you have the simplifying aspect of eating till you're full. I'd also assume it would be a lot simpler when it comes to, well, it is inevitably when you go grocery shopping, when it comes to what am I going to have for dinner tonight. I would assume, you're going to have less recipes. You probably find your handful of recipes that you're going to use on a regular basis because you have less ingredients. So I can see how life in a general sense, you'd save a lot of mental bandwidth and it would just simplify things in a big way.
Absolutely. And it winds up for many people being cheaper, especially people who are taking a handful of supplements every day and who are trying to buy all this protein bar and this protein shake and this and that. Because like I said earlier, when you do the math on those, they wind up to be $20 or $30 or $40 a pound. And would you rather spend $30 or $40 a pound for protein bars and protein shakes, or would you rather just get your protein from $4 a pound eggs and even $10 a pound beef? It becomes very self-explanatory. And I think you're exactly right. You save all that mental bandwidth, because another thing that ceases to have meaning is all the advertisements. The advertisements typically just literally become background noise. You could care less what Kellogg's has come out with the new whatever. You could care less because you now realize that's not food. That's a product they're trying to sell me. They just want my $5. When the new protein bar, the new liver cleanse, or the new whatever, fill in the blank, because everybody's trying to make a buck. This is human nature. That doesn't mean we're evil. We're just all trying to get by and make a living. But you realize as an individual, I don't need any of that shit. Literally, none of it. I don't need any of that. And for some people, that saves them hundreds of dollars a month. When they realize with just a few simple supplements, only needed because of our mismanagement of herds and of soil for the last 200 years. If it weren't for that mismanagement, we wouldn't even need the supplements. But currently we do. But there's only a very short list of inexpensive supplements that you need if you're eating a proper human diet. That includes lots of fatty meat and hopefully some sort of liver once or twice a week. You don't need any of those supplements. You don't need any of those protein bars, collagen, branched chain amino acid, creatine. I mean, literally, I could go on for 5 minutes listing all the crap that is now a waste of money for you. And for many people to find that I'm saving tons of mental bandwidth. I don't have to think about this shit anymore. I just do it. And I'm actually saving money on my monthly grocery and supplement bill. I don't have to buy all that stuff anymore. I literally go to 1 or 2 sections in the grocery. I'm done. I'm in and out of the grocery store in literally 10 minutes, if checkout's fast enough. I'm back home. I've got my food for the week. I don't have any temptations in the fridge, the freezer, or the pantry. I can meal prep if I want to. I'm not a meal prepper, Jesse. I don't know about you, but my meal prep is go look in the fridge, grab some meat, put it in the skillet for 3 minutes on each side, eat the meat. That's my meal prep. And that's how I live every day. Or I'll go get a dozen eggs, crack them open, and lightly cook them just till the white's done and eat that the whole dozen. That's my meal prep. And I don't like to meal prep, but if somebody wants to meal prep, you can go crazy prepping your meat and getting it ready in individual servings if that's your style, but that's not my style.
Let's make sure we clarify what that short list of supplements that you're into are. I know you mentioned salt before, and that could be looked at as sort of a supplement to what you're consuming on a regular basis.
Right.
And electrolytes. But what other ones do we have in there?
So salt should not be a supplement. It should be in our food, but it's currently not because we think eating blood and stuff like that is gross. So we have to treat it as a supplement. The electrolytes and the minerals we have to treat as a supplement because the soil has been so mismanaged for the last 2 centuries that in either the minerals are not in the soil or they are in the soil, but the soil has been so improperly managed that the minerals are locked up deep in the soil and we can't get access to them. So if the plant that grew in the soil, if it doesn't contain the mineral, then I don't care what the USDA Food Data Central website says. That mineral is not in that broccoli. That mineral is not in that strawberry if it's not in the soil. It has to be in the soil and it has to be available. Same goes for meat. If the soil that the pig, the chicken, the cow grazed on, if that soil doesn't contain that mineral, then it's not in the beef. It's not in the chicken. It's not in the egg, regardless of what the USDA says. It's in an egg. It can't be in there. It's impossible, right? And so salt, electrolytes, minerals, and then for many people who live in the interior of large continents, there's not enough iodine in the soil. And many people are deficient in iodine and they have no idea. They have symptoms of low thyroid, fatigue, can't lose weight, etc. And they're really quite iodine deficient. Checking your serum iodine level will not reveal this because your body uses iodine for so many things that it keeps your serum level very tightly controlled. People think, oh, it's just about your thyroid gland, iodine. The people who are a little smarter think, oh, no, it's about your thyroid and your mammary glands. People who are a little smarter say, oh, no, it's also your salivary glands. And then people who have watched my YouTube video about just how important iodine is know that every cell in your body, without exception, that's ever been studied, has a sodium iodide symporter on the cell membrane. What that means is that your cell is expending energy to pull iodine inside the cell. That's not trivial. Cells don't waste energy to pull whatever inside the cell unless it needs that thing. And then vitamin D, for many of us that live at far northern or far southern latitudes, we just don't get enough vitamin D because the sun should be the place where you get the majority. You can also get vitamin D from your diet. I've got a YouTube video, the 7 top vitamin D rich foods, and you can get it from there, but for many of us, we can't get enough. And so for some of us, at least during parts of the year, we need to supplement with vitamin D, and that's literally it. If you're including egg yolks in your diet, you're going to get plenty of folate. There are some strict carnivores who only eat ruminant meats called a lion diet, and a few of those guys have developed a folate deficiency. Not it wasn't dangerous. Their level dipped below normal. But if you include egg yolks in your proper human diet, you're going to get plenty of folate, plenty of choline. And so that you understand what a short list of supplements that is. And 3 of the things, the salt, the electrolytes, and the minerals, you'll only have to take those until such time as you spurred the local rancher and local farmer economy until you're surrounded by local ranchers and local gardeners again. Then you won't need these at all, which is great. I'd be very happy to never, ever have another bottle sold because I'm not here trying to sell supplements. I'm here trying to help people improve their health.
When you went over your food prep there, I got a bit of an idea of what you'd be eating in a typical day. But let's get into the nuances there of when you're eating and what you'd eat in a typical day, given your diet is so unique compared to what the average person is eating.
So I'm 6 feet 3 inches tall and currently weigh about 230 pounds. That's where my metabolic set point currently is. That may change for the better or for the worse, but I'm very happy because I used to weigh 297 pounds. And so I'm very happy with 230. I tend to hold more muscle. I'm very active on the farm. And so a great percentage of that body weight is strong bones and lots of muscle. So I'm very happy at 230. I feel great. My clothes fit, except the shirt Nisha bought me. It's a little tight in the chest. But so my typical diet, I just wanted to give that so people would go, okay, well, I'm 5'1" woman and I weigh 110 pounds. What's my diet going to look like compared to his? And so typically on a typical day, I'll eat probably 2 pounds of beef, probably the yolks from 8 eggs and the whites from 4 of those eggs. I do better with a higher fat, and I'll put butter on the eggs and I'll put butter on the beef as well. I salt liberally. I put a few drops of the mineral drops just because, out of an abundance of caution, because I don't know if that cow grazed on soil that had selenium and had strontium and had molybdenum and had iodine. I don't know if that soil had that. I don't know where that cow came from because I bought it at Walmart or Kroger, right? And so out of an abundance of caution, I always add those things just to make sure I'm getting enough, because if I get a little too much, I'm just going to urinate that away. So probably 2 pounds of beef. Sometimes I'll eat chicken, sometimes pork, but I tend to feel best when I'm eating beef and egg yolks. That feels like where I'm the best. 2 or 3 times a week, I'll eat a couple of cans of sardines with the bones in and the skin on. And I usually put 0 carb mustard on my sardines because I don't love sardines. But with a little bit of 0 carb mustard, I love them at that point, and I can eat them. About one day a week, I'll eat a tin of cod liver or some type of liver. I'll eat chicken liver, I'll eat sheep's liver, venison liver, wild turkey liver, because we're surrounded by hunters, and they all know to bring me the heart and liver. And so I've always got a freezer full of turkey heart and liver, venison heart and liver, and at least once or twice or thrice a week, I'll try to eat some liver, because that is the ultimate superfood. That's inarguable. Anybody who's looked up the nutrition density of liver, any liver, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be beef liver. It can be any liver. It blows away superfoods like blueberries and kale and Aussie and all the other bullshit that people talk about. If you want true nutrient density, eat 2 ounces of liver twice a week. It will obviate so many supplements. And so I like chicken liver. I like cod liver. I can eat beef liver, but I don't love it. I can eat pork liver, but I don't love it. And so I just stick with the liver I love. And I'm also always looking for liver recipes because I would love to love beef liver, but as of yet, I can't love it. It tastes too livery to me. But that's literally my diet. Rarely I'll have some veg off my wife Nisha's plate. So she's a ketovore. So she keeps her total carbs under 10 total grams a day. And so sometimes if she's got some delectable looking roasted Brussels sprouts, I'll have one. But that's rare. I don't make a daily practice of that because even for me, that's too many carbohydrates if I did that on a daily basis. What else? I drink water. I do drink caffeine-free coffee. I've been off caffeine for a couple of months just to see. I'm doing that N equals 1, the most important experiment to me. Does caffeine affect me negatively or not? And I got a lot of feedback from the carnivore community saying, dude, you need to quit caffeine because I promise you'll feel better. So I'm off caffeine for a month and a half now. And in the future, I'm going to do a couple of months with no coffee whatsoever just to see if I feel better or not. I feel no different with decaf versus caffeinated. And I know it's not 100% caffeine free. I know that. But when I'm doing no coffee for a month or two, I'll see. If is that beneficial to me or not? If it is, I'll continue it. If it's not beneficial or not beneficial enough, then I'll go back to drinking my regular coffee. But I think anytime you hear something like that, you should be like, I wonder if I should try that. Nothing's going to kill you if you try it for a month.
So your weight loss journey, you started at 297. You mentioned you're down to 230 where you feel good right now. How long was that journey to get down? What would that be? 37 pounds or 37 pounds. That would be what, 67 pounds?
Yeah, 67 pounds. It probably took me 3 years.
And what was the dietary progress? Talk about when you really noticed things kick in and the weight started coming off.
So the first few years of my medical practice, I basically lived in scrubs. Okay. I was a full-time emergency department physician working in the ER. And then I also started a clinic, which I thought was going to be a side gig, but quickly turned into another full-time job. And so I lived in scrubs because it was cool. You know, I looked like Grey's Anatomy, but also I didn't have time and I didn't have the inclination to develop a wardrobe. So I just lived in scrubs. They have a drawstring on the waist. And so you can literally gain 10 inches on your waistline and your scrubs will still fit. Right? And so it's very misleading. You're like, no, my scrubs still fit. It's fine. But one day I got on the scale and I hadn't been on the scale. I just never did that. And I was 290 pounds. I'm like, holy shit, that's not good. I knew I'd gained some weight, but come on. And I thought, well, I better get all my labs checked. And sure enough, I was pre-diabetic. I had an A1C of 6.1. And at that point, I didn't even know enough to check my fasting insulin or any of these other markers that we now know sometimes can help people. And so I thought, well, I'm pre-diabetic. I better follow the ADA diet. And so I printed out their handout that I was giving to patients, and I started following that, and I started jogging. And I did that for 180 days and got back on the scale, and I'd actually gained 5 or 6 more pounds. And my A1C had went up a little bit more. And that was the epiphany for me. Like, okay, so I honestly don't know a damn thing about how to feed a human. Keep in mind, I've been daily giving nutrition advice to every single one of my patients. Do you find that worrisome? I do. Yeah. And so really the reason I do social media now is to make up for my past indiscretions and my past sins and failings where I actually harmed people with the nutrition advice I was giving them, which consisted mainly of join the gym and join Weight Watchers. That's what you need to do. Stop being a glutton and a sloth. And so, yeah. So I after 3 or 6 months of the ADA diet that made me more metabolically sick, I thought, well, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. And so I read a book by Mark Sisson, The Primal Blueprint. And I read a book by Lauren Cordain, The Paleo Diet. And I found a copy of Dr. Atkins' Diet Revolution for 50 cents at a rummage sale. Those were my 3 first books I read. And I was like, okay, so low carb, nutrient dense. Okay, all right. I kind of see how that, sugar, carbs turn into sugar. Okay, all right. So I started doing then low carb primal paleo, but it wasn't low carb enough. And my health improved a little, but not much. Inflammation definitely didn't improve any because on my paleo, I was eating lots of quinoa and lots of sweet potatoes, right, and lots of beans. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I kept hearing about keto, and I read up on that a little bit. I'm like, no, that makes even more sense because it's lower in carbohydrates. Not just am I eating natural carbohydrates, which yeah, okay, that makes sense. But I'm eating low carbohydrate. Maybe that's the key. And when I started keto, real whole food keto with lots of fatty meat and eggs, I started to lose weight like gangbusters. And when I say lose weight, I mean metabolize fat. I wasn't losing muscle. I was putting on muscle. The more meat I ate, I was actually just naturally carrying more muscle, which I found weird. I thought you had to work out to gain muscle. And I still think you do have to work out to carry lots of muscle. If you want to look like the cover of Muscle and Fitness, you got to work out. But to just effortlessly carry more muscle and have stronger bones, it's literally your diet. And so I reversed the prediabetes completely with keto, lost probably down to 260, 250. And then I kept hearing about Sean Baker in this carnivore diet. And I thought, well, if you think about it rationally, a carnivore diet is just keto, but with the carbohydrate intake turned down to zero. I think I'm going to try this. So I did a challenge on my Facebook page. I was like, hey, let's do carnivore for 30 days. Now, I had other medical conditions as well. One of the things I suffered from was severe reflux, ungodly reflux. I used to take 2 Nexium every day. When the drug rep brought Nexium samples, the patients didn't get those samples. I took them all because it was awful. It affected my speech. It affected how I slept at night. It was terrible. On keto, I got 80% better. Now I could just take a Tums occasionally, once a day or every other day, and my heartburn was under control. I didn't have to take the Nexium, which then subsequently, with some research, I found out all the terrible things that taking a daily Nexium or Prevacid or Prilosec do to your body. They're very, very unhealthy, but most people don't know that, including most doctors. And so my heartburn was 80% better with keto, which, oh my God, if you've ever had severe heartburn, that's a big deal. But after that month of carnivore, I'd lost another 5 pounds, but I had zero heartburn, Jesse. And that was miraculous, to not have to worry about where the Nexium was, where's the apple cider vinegar, where's the Tums. I didn't have to worry about that. And I didn't realize it the first few weeks of carnivore, but on that last day, I'm like, holy shit, I haven't had any reflux for a month. This is awesome. I'm going to do this for another month. And the weight loss just kept going. And so I had stalls and sticks just like everybody else. I stuck at 260 for quite a while. Then I stuck at 250. Then I stuck at 240. And now I'm stuck at 230. Is this my optimal weight, or should I be 210? I think that's debatable at this point, with my visceral body fat percentage being what it currently is, which is well within normal range. Would I be healthier at 110? I'd probably look better. But I don't know if I'd be healthier or not. I think at some point there's a range of healthy body fat, and there's a range of body weight that's healthy for people. I don't think there's one specific number. But I've been carnivore ever since, and that's been 4 years now, 4.5 years. That there's literally, and so every now and then at Christmas anniversary, I'll go off a little bit, but I immediately feel it in my gut because I fatten very easily. I'll immediately feel my pants starting to talk to me. And also, I'll start to have just a little echo of heartburn if I get too far off, or I'll have a little echo of the severe knee arthritis that I used to have every single day, even in my mid-30s. That'll start to flare up, and I'm like, oh, okay, time to tighten it up, because my goal is to. I care what the scale says, but that's not my primary motivation. My primary motivation is being a good example to my 6 kids and to my community, to my family, and my patients, is being very motivated mentally, being very active physically. We have a 40-acre farm, and I'm out there. As soon as we're done, I'm headed to the farm to work for multiple hours. And I want to be able to do that without having to take breaks, without having to be exhausted, without having to be in pain the next day. Those are my whys, you might say. Why are you doing this? That's why. I want to be kicking the soccer ball around with Beckett's grandkids. When I'm 107, I want to be that guy out there with all the family going, oh, Grandpa, sit down, you're going to hurt yourself. And I'm like, leave me alone. I'm playing with my great grandkids. That's the guy I want to be. And I think this is the way of eating that's going to get me as close to that as is possible. And so it was on carnivore that I attained my lowest body fat percentage and my lowest weight on the scale. Zero heartburn, joint pain non-existent. I used to have rosacea. That's gone with carnivore. I used to have severe dandruff. I used to have severe toenail fungus. There's a long list. It was not pretty at all. Okay. I'm not sure how I landed Nisha Salisbury, but I did somehow, luckily, thank God. But it was not a pretty picture. I was not a happy guy. I was not comfortable with how I looked in the mirror. I was not comfortable with the way my body was performing. And on that journey from high carb to low carb to keto to ketovore, now to carnivore, that was my journey. And will I always have to stay a carnivore? I mean, I don't know. I love it. I'm happy to stay here. But would there come a time when I could go back and eat 50 total grams of carbs a day? Maybe. I don't know. We currently have no research, no testing for the epigenetic stuff. There are people out there who will try to sell you genetic testing and epigenetic testing, but currently we do not know enough about that. There's not enough research for that to in any way be reliable. And so all we can do is just go by how we feel, how we're thinking, and how we look in the mirror. That's literally the state of the art that you've got to go on right now as far as what foods you should eat and what food-like products you should avoid.
So you've narrowed your diet down to carnivore, and you mentioned 4 or 5 years you've been on this diet. What is it like when you sit down to a meal having only that narrow range of foods you're eating? Do you still get excited about food, or has it just become fuel at this point? Talk about how you feel, because again, you've been doing this a while now and having a lot of the same foods.
So very many people are mortified when you say all you're going to eat for the next 90 days is beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. They're like, I'll be bored to death. That's diet. There's no way. I need variety. Well, for many people, that's the addiction talking. Because if you eat a large enough variety, there's going to be some sugar and carbs in there, right? For other people, they think that, but I have yet to sit down to a plate full of perfectly cooked ribeye and eggs and say, darn it, I'm so sick of ribeye and eggs. That's yet to happen. And so I think a lot of people are pleasantly surprised that when they're eating nutrient-dense, ancestrally appropriate food that's uninflammatory, their body quickly falls in love with that food. And it's never the addiction fall in love with, like when you used to be craving that huge bowl of Cocoa Puffs and chocolate milk every night as you watch Netflix. It's not that kind of pleasure. It's a different kind of pleasure. It's a more instinctual pleasure, a more biological pleasure. But I'm never disappointed when I sit down to a plate of meat and eggs. That's number one. Number two is, don't you miss all that other stuff. And initially when I was going low carb and primal and paleo and keto, I would miss it and I would go back. But that was the addiction talking. Now, as my body has come to realize, oh man, we're about to sit down to pure nutrition. Yes. And remembering what happens when I eat that inflammatory junk, I don't miss it at all. And it's not even that I don't eat it now because I don't want that flare up of rosacea or that flare up of GERD. That's not even the motivation. Now, I don't even consider this food anymore. This is not food. And I think when people have that shift in their paradigm, that makes them bulletproof at that point. You can't trick them. If you come out with a new granola bar or a new cereal or a new protein, this, that, or the other, they're just like, no, that's not real food. I eat real food because I want real health. So I eat real food. And I think for many people, that's almost the armor. After you've done this for a while and you've strayed a few times and you've reaped the inflammatory harvest of straying from your diet, you're like, oh, that sucked. Okay, let's not do that anymore. So you get that negative feedback, and then you're getting the positive feedback from eating this nutrient-dense food. But at some point, you just realize it's like an epiphany. You're like, that shit's not even food. My grandmother called it food, and my mother called it food. And people don't realize it takes 2 generations to form a habit in a culture. If your grandmother taught you something and your mom reinforced it, that's it. That is that in your animal mind, that's law. That is a law of nature. And so if you grew up with your mom and your grandmother giving you this, you think this is food. You're deluded. And they loved you, and they still do. They didn't mean to mislead you, but they were misled. And so they passed on this misleading tradition down to you with nothing but love in their heart. But yet you're the one suffering. So it's not your fault, but it is your problem. That's the bad news. The good news is you can fix this by realizing, okay, let me think again with fresh brain. Let me look with fresh eyes. What should human beings eat on a daily basis, and what should they never eat on a daily basis if the goal is optimizing my physical and mental health? And so now if you could make me the most scrumptious hot fudge sundae cake, whatever, it's literally not tempting at all. But there was a period of time and during the transition where I'd have been like, one bite's not going to hurt anything. And then that one bite turned into 2 servings. But now I'm not even tempted by that. And I think most people find that when they've been PhD long enough, strict enough, it just loses its magic. And I think that's a large part of it. We learn superstition from our friends and family, right? If you just think about us as an organism, we learn black cat crossing the road. We learn that stuff's not inherent. That's not intuitive. We're taught that. And then we pass that on to our ancestors. But obviously a black cat crossing your path is meaningless. It means nothing. But we're taught that. And so we make the sign of the X and all the other superstitions that we do because our grandmother and our mother, our grandfather, our uncle, people that we evolutionarily listen to without filters, whatever they say is that's the law of nature because that's how we're programmed to think as children. So many things that you were taught are incorrect. And that's okay as long as you realize that and you re-examine everything you were taught about nutrition, and in many cases about living a proper human life. You got to revisit all that stuff with a fresh brain and fresh eyes and go, is that really true? Or is that not true? And that continues to happen to me, Jesse, even to this day. And this is my life. I study nutrition and medicine and anthropology and paleoanthropology. That's literally, ask my wife. She'll be like, yeah, I'm tired of hearing it. I don't want to hear it. But I still discover things like, oh, holy crap. I've never thought of it that way before. Huh. Okay, got it. And so don't feel like, oh, I'm an idiot. I'm dumb. I don't know any of this stuff. Every time you learn and every time you unlearn one of these superstitions that you were taught, you're one step closer to your goal of physical health and mental health. You're one step closer to achieving the waistline and the A1C and all the other markers. You're one step closer. And so as you unlearn just as quickly, and it goes hand in hand with learning, you're also unlearning. Ultimately, you're going to have unlearned enough bullshit and learned enough true nutrition fact for human beings. There's good health. There it is, right in front of you. And at that point, it'll seem self-evident, like, well, duh, but you got to unlearn a lot of false beliefs that you've been taught, in many cases by Kellogg's and General Mills and Kraft, Heinz and Mondelez and Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They've taught you tons of things as you were growing up through television and magazine commercials. But you in your subconscious, you think that's fact. But it's not fact. And you got to unlearn all those things. And so for many people, this is almost a journey of self-discovery or rediscovering who they really are and what they really are. And some people hate that journey and they fight every step of it, but others love that journey, like discovering who I really am and what I really need and what I can do without and what's bullshit. Many people love that journey. And I'm one of those people. I love that journey. Every day when I discover I was wrong about something, that's a huge happy moment for me, because not only now do I get to be even more healthy, but I get to help 1 million people. They don't have to keep making that same mistake for 5 more years until they discover it. I can make a YouTube video and they're like, I never thought of it that way. That makes good sense. I'm going to try that.
At this point, do you still practice medicine, or do you put all your energy into creating content online and helping people that way?
So I have a small family practice. I still see patients who basically have been my patients for decades. Some are housebound. They can't get out. And so I make home visits for them just so they don't have to go see a new doctor. But I'm not taking new patients. Currently, I'm devoting the rest of my energy to social media, to reaching out to people saying, hey, you don't have to be sick the rest of your life. You don't have to have this mental illness, this physical illness for the rest of your life. There's a way out of that. Let me show you the way. And so I feel like that multiplies my ability to help people. And this is all Nisha's fault. My wife, she's told me 5 years ago, you should start a YouTube channel. And initially when she said that, I'm like, that's dumb. I'm a doctor. I'm a board certified fellow in the American Academy of Family Physicians. Why would I start a YouTube channel? And then one day I came home and she said, how many people did you help today? I said, I don't know, 30, 40. She's like, that's great. I'm proud of you. What if you could have just have answered my question? I helped 3,000 or 4,000 people today. Would that be something you'd be interested in? And I'm like, well, yeah, but that'd be a busy day in the clinic. She's like, you could start a YouTube channel. And so after about the third suggestion, I'm like, no, she's absolutely right. Why would I basically keep this from 3,000 other people a day when I could just be sharing this with them? I'll make a YouTube video, put it out there. If it helps people, great. If it doesn't help people, it didn't cost me a penny. Why not do that? And so I started doing that. I would go upstairs at lunch at the clinic and make a video. When I got to the clinic early, I'd make a video. Before I saw patients, I'd make a video at the ER in between during downtime. And that's how the channel has grown. And now I do the social media thing full-time, part-time practice, also full-time job as a farmer and a rancher. So I still have 2 full-time jobs, but they're different jobs than they used to be. And I feel like that I'm helping many, many more people than I could have ever helped just in the clinic.
When you started to put your energy into the online world and you were still practicing at the time, how long did it take before things started ramping up and you could see there's really some momentum and people want to hear what I have to say here?
It probably took a year and a half. And the thing that really freaked me and my office staff out was I can remember after probably a year and a half of making YouTube videos, my nurse, who I'd worked with for over a decade, she came in and she's like, what are you up to? Because these are my people. These are country people. They're not into the social media. They may be on Facebook, but they're not gleaning information from social media. She's like, what are you up to? I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, well, the first patient is a lady from North Carolina who flew to Nashville, Tennessee and rented an Uber or rented a car and is driven to Camden to see you as a new patient. And then later in the morning, we have a lady who flew from California to Nashville, rented a car, and is driven to Camden, Tennessee to see you as a new patient. Then this afternoon, we have a gentleman who flew from Arizona to Nashville. And so she's a common sense country girl. And she's like, you got to be up to something fishy. I don't know. Why are these people coming from other states in the union and literally renting a car to drive another 90 minutes to come see you in the clinic in Camden, Tennessee? And I'm like, they must have seen my YouTube videos. I don't know. And sure enough, that every single one of them. And so so we had a clinic fire several years ago. Our clinic burned to the ground. But before that happened, over half of my patients every day coming to the clinic were people who had seen my YouTube videos or my Facebook videos or my Instagram page and they were so unhappy with their existing healthcare provider that they had went that far out of their way, which to me, it's the ultimate compliment. Like my heart, I feel so humble and so blessed and so proud of Nisha's idea that caused that to happen, that these people were so hungry for health, mental health, physical health. They were starving for it. And they were getting no answers that helped them in any way from their current healthcare provider, that they literally got on an airplane, then got in a rental car, then spent the night at the Best Western in Camden, Tennessee to see me in the clinic. That told me everything I needed to know, that people are very disgruntled. They're very unhappy. They're frustrated. They're sick and tired of it. They want answers, but they also want answers that work. They don't care if these answers have been vetted by the World Health Organization. They could care less if the American Diabetes Association agrees with this or not. What they care is they want to get healthier metabolically. They want to get stronger physically. They want to get healthier mentally. And when they hear a message like mine on YouTube and they're like, okay, this is some crazy redneck from Tennessee. I don't know though. Let me try it. I've tried everything else. After they've tried that for 30, 60, 90 days and it actually worked. And they also weren't starving to death. And they also felt better mentally, not just oh, I've lost 5 pounds, but I'm starving to death and I'm miserable. No, it's all better. Physically, I'm healthier. Mentally, I'm healthier. And I lost some weight. And I had to cut down on my blood pressure medicine because my blood pressure was getting too low. When all that stuff happens, a common sense person, an average person, just a bus driver, a hairstylist, a whoever, when that kind of thing happens, when that's never happened on any dietary pattern they've ever tried for their entire adult life, that's very, very powerful. And it's hard for them to forget that. It's hard for them to unhear that. Once they've heard the results that a proper human diet gives them, that's it. They're like, oh, okay, so this is a proper human diet. I don't need to veer from this. I need to eat this from now on if I want to be healthy physically and mentally.
And I feel like two of the factors, at least, that have contributed to your growth are, one, you're a medical doctor, so you've got the education behind you and the credibility. And two, you're somebody that's in the trenches with the people that are watching your videos as somebody that's had their own struggles with their health. And they can see the difference between, 297 pounds now down to 230. You've put this information to the test in your own body and showed that it works.
Yep. And that's another law of human nature, Jesse, is that when people see somebody that they know personally, when they see that person transform their health, or they see that person get rich, or they see that person, whatever, they immediately are drawn and attracted to, I want to know details. I want to know what you did because I know you. Remember earlier in this conversation, we were talking about the local regenerative ranchers and farmers. I know that guy. I can go talk to him. So when first of all, when my patients saw previously morbidly obese Dr. Berry, all of a sudden he's losing a ton of weight. And not only that, he's in a better mood. And not only that, his rosacea is better. And he's not clearing his throat constantly because of his severe reflux. And he's not limping because of that knee arthritis. They see that and they know me. And they've known me for over a decade. That's powerful. That is a powerful, powerful, hardwired thing in human psychology. When you see somebody you know improve something, you want to do that too. And so that's why I think the biggest thing has been eye to eye, word of mouth. You see somebody you know and love, Uncle Jesse, Aunt Karen. You see them, you haven't seen them in a year, and they're like, "Holy crap, they look amazing! What did you do, Uncle Emmer?" And they tell you, you're like, "Oh." And then you do the requisite internet search, and you find me, or you find one of the other people in the space talking about a proper human diet. And it's so simple. It's inexpensive. You don't have to sign up for a program or buy $100 a month in supplements. You just eat real food and you get healthier. And so I think all that together, plus me being a doctor doesn't hurt. I totally agree. Plus me previously being morbidly obese and miserable and now not being that, I think that helps. All that together kind of gives people this package that just makes common sense. And once you understand all the principles of a proper human diet, it becomes common sense. Like, duh, why haven't I done this all my life? Why haven't I heard about this 20, 30, 40 years ago? Why didn't my grandmother and mother teach me to eat this way? And it's because as a society, we've all been deluded and misled by billion-dollar companies and by governmental organizations that have basically been captured by those billion-dollar corporations who are trying to make a profit. They're not interested in your health.
Ken, I know you got to go here soon. I want to respect your time, but we'll end on this. We've talked a lot about the diet and specific foods that you're eating and the whole continuum of carbohydrates. But I think a big piece of this that we don't want to leave without addressing is the when to eat piece. So let's talk about what you do there and how you look at that.
Yeah. So again, what we're trying to do is mimic our ancestors for the last 3.5 million years ago, before 15,000 years. How did they eat? Did they eat 3 meals a day with snacks in between? Obviously not, right? But the big food manufacturers want you to think that 3 meals with snacks in between is the proper human diet. But quickly you're like, that was impossible. There's no way they did that. Probably what they did from the anthropological evidence that we have is they ate once a day, twice a day, maybe once every other day, depending on how tight the food situation was. And they fasted for the rest of those hours of the day. And so many people try to start their health improvement journey with intermittent fasting. But if you're still eating a high carb diet, that's going to suck really, really bad. That's going to be very, very hard to stick to. It's going to feel like semi-starvation. It's going to feel like calorie restriction. But if you start first by eating plenty of healthy animal fat and healthy animal protein, it becomes very easy to do some degree of intermittent fasting. In many cases, you forget to eat because you're just not hungry. And so the reason all this matters for weight loss is because of something called hyperinsulinemia, which is very, very common. Probably if you lined up every adult human in the United States and check their insulin level, they're going to have some degree, probably 80-90% are going to have some degree of hyperinsulinemia. But doctors don't check that. You don't know to check that. So you don't know. You're blind to that. And when you start to lower the carbohydrate intake, your insulin level starts to return back to normal. That's the sweet spot where you can start to metabolize or burn fat, right? And so the longer you go without eating, the lower your insulin goes. That's important. And that's where fasting comes in and holds hands perfectly with keto or carnivore. And so for me personally, I'll just tell you what I do. I typically fast until somewhere between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Every day. I don't even think about eating. I'm up making a video. I'm working on the farm, playing with the kids. I don't even think about food until somewhere between 2 and 6 p.m. And then I'll start to get a little hungry. And depending on what's going on, I can fast for longer if needs be. If not, I can come in and do my food prep, my meal prep that I told you about earlier, and have my meat and eggs cooked in 5 minutes, eaten in 20, and then I'm done. So I may eat one meal a day, depending, or I may eat a second meal 2 to 4 hours later. And so my feasting window, and I call it a feasting window because I don't want you to portion control. I don't want you to calorie restrict. I want you to eat until you're comfortably full in those 1 or 2 meals a day. That's usually somewhere between 2 and 6 hours. And that it depends on family, social, other things. But on average, it's 2 to 6 hours a day is my feasting window, which leaves me with a fasting window of 22 to 18 to 22 hours. That's just my life. Gives me much more time to do stuff. I don't have to take snacks with me when I go out on the farm and work, or when I'm traveling. I never eat in airports. I never eat on airplanes. I don't need to, because I'm eating enough healthy animal fat and healthy animal protein that I'm satiated. I can fast if I need to. And at 2:30, I definitely still have stored body fat. So I'm in no danger of starving to death, right? I've got enough stored fat that if something happened and I couldn't eat for 7 days, I'd be perfectly safe and fine. As long as I had some water to drink and some salt and minerals, I could not eat for 7 days. Now, I don't do extended fasting. Some people love that, but I don't do that as a rule for me. It's just not necessary. I'm happy with where I'm at. But if I were still much more overweight than I wanted to be, I would start to do a 2-day fast once a week, or a 3-day fast every second week, or a 7-day fast once a month. I would implement that if I still were not happy where I'm at body fat percentage wise. And for many people, they enjoy that and they get mental health benefits from doing those longer fasts. And I'm a huge proponent of those. I think fasting is part of a proper human diet, is not eating all day long every day. And so, but that's going to cost the big food manufacturers millions of dollars if we all stop eating 3 meals a day and 3 snacks in between. That could tank the economy theoretically. But I'm not interested in the money side of this. I'm interested in your health. And so I think for most people, if they'll start by lowering the carbohydrates, the fasting will naturally follow, and you won't even have to really try. And so I recommend fasting. It's one of the principles of a proper human diet. And I didn't mention it earlier, but that's because I don't think it should come initially. I think it should come after a few weeks or a few months on a diet that's full of enough fat and enough protein that your hunger hormones are calmed down, your satiety hormones are triggered, and your fasting insulin level has returned back down to low normal. Then it's much easier to fast. You don't even really think about it. Sometimes it's even accidental.
Ken, this is a great place to end. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing everything you did today. We're going to link up your YouTube channel, your social media, your book, everything in the show notes. And it's just wonderful to connect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. It was a pleasure.
Now that you're done my conversation with Ken, you're going to want to stick around here and catch my chat with Jason. He's got a lot more to share about weight loss. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you over there.
From a scientific mathematical standpoint, it's actually very, very obvious what needs to be done. You need to change the hormones, not the number.